It's FoosTalk Live.
You talking to me?
Compelling and lively banter.
Are you going to talk to us?
Talking foosball.
Foosball was how I measured my value as a man. You took that away.
Players and fans, promoters and pros. Unedited and raw.
Talk.
Living in the moment.
We have a lot of important things to talk about.
All while practicing social distancing.
Cool. We'll talk. No big whoop.
Let's get this thing started. FoosTalk Live. Coming to you live from the studios of Foosball Radio and Inside Foos TV, it's the 36th episode of FoosTalk Live, brought to you in part by 518 Prints, truly one of the best printers of promotional items, t-shirts, jackets, hoodies, and foosball apparel. Visit 518prints.com. FoosTalk also brought to you in part by Foosballers the Movie. Find out more about this Joe Hesslinger documentary at foosballersthemovie.com. Brought to you in part by Foosball Clubs USA, promoting foosball through school systems all over the country. Visit foosballclubsusa.com. Also brought to you by Foos by Tony and Foos by Brandon. Take lessons from a top pro today. And brought to you by the USTSO, helping to usher a new era of competitive foosball. Register now at usafoosball.com. Well, hey there. It's Tom Robinson back together again with you and, of course, my stalwart companions, once again engaging in the lively banter of foosball this evening. This is, by the way, our 36th episode and officially our last live show of 2020. Not our last show, but our last live show of 2020. So we hope you enjoy. Thank you for joining us. And now, with the velvety tones we know is the greatest play-by-play voice in foosball history from the great state of Colorado, Jim Stevens via Arizona, I understand.
Yeah. Hey, Tom. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Episode 36, the last one of the year. That's exciting. And what a year it's been. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. Tom, I'm down in at Picacho Peak, Arizona.
Picacho Peak. Where exactly in the state is that?
It's along I-10. It's between Phoenix and Tucson. It's sort of a standalone peak that rises up about 2,500 feet. Beautiful, covered with saguaro cactuses along the sides. And I hate to tell everybody this, but I will. It was 73 degrees here today. And so, of course, I live in Durango. 3 days ago in Durango, it was 4. And then today, 73 degrees, about 6,000 feet lower down than Durango. Man. And really nice down here in the desert.
Well, I hope you enjoy your. Now, you spending the entire holiday season there?
No, we'll be back in Durango for a white Christmas, but we're here for a few days doing some family stuff, and then I'll be back to celebrate in my hometown of Durango, Colorado, here in a few days.
Nice, awesome. Well, drive safe, of course. So, of course, we do want to welcome in our other sturdy confidants, our other host of FoosTalk Live.
Brown cow? How now, brown cow? How now, brown cow?
He always warms up. And I gotta say,
are we ready?
You're getting better at this. You're getting much better, Mark. You're finally coming out of your shell.
Okay, I'm ready, you guys.
Welcome, Mark El Toro Torres. Hello, Mark.
Hey, fellas, the show can start now. Hey, Jim, are you ever home, Jim? All it is vacation for you, bro. Living it up.
Yeah, right.
And then it goes home to Durango. It's like going home to. It's like going home to Aspen. Yeah, I was out in Arizona. I'm going home to Aspen. Awesome.
Well, it's not like my hometown is Los Angeles or anything. And so, no, I am home occasionally and really enjoy being home as well. But just looking for a little warm weather, a little family time this week. So we headed south. But yes, to answer your question, Mark, with a question mark, it's yes, I do go home sometimes.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
Awesome.
Nice.
Well, I think that since you are on the road, more than likely you've been working up a mighty thirst. What Jim and I like to do right about this time is to reveal our favorite IPA. And so, Jim, I know that you are in the wilds of Arizona. What did you find in the cooler in Arizona?
It's funny, because I look for this particular brewery everywhere I go because it's my favorite. I've talked about it extensively. It's the Melvin Brewery out of Wyoming.
Wow.
But I went to a local store here, and they had something very special made by Melvin. It's called Back into Haze. It's a hazy IPA, kind of a New England variety where it's unfiltered. 6.5% alcohol.
Nice.
Has a really, really cool label of a guy standing on one arm, listening to music. I guess sort of a Purple Haze kind of effect.
Standing
Jimi
on
Hendrix
one
type
arm.
of thing. With a boombox. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway, it's very surreal. A very
boombox.
A boombox. Yeah, you remember those?
Wearing a Walkman, carrying a boombox.
Uh-huh.
No,
Yeah, correct.
Cardboard and breakdancing, I'm sure. Okay.
Yes, that's what he's doing. You are correct. Back into Haze, and let's have a taste. That Melvin Brewery can do no wrong.
Yummy.
I love everything they do, and this is especially good.
Excellent.
How about you, Tom?
Well, we're going on the bright side. Yep, because I've been buried under snow. I need something to think about that's lighter. Bright Side IPA. It comes from Portland, Maine. And this is the Lone Pine Brewing Company, 7.1% on the alcohol scale. And it's got to make me feel better, I'm sure. Absolutely. Let's see.
Couldn't hurt. Couldn't hurt.
Yeah, right? Yeah, my shoveling arm is a little sore here. Sorry. There you go. Yeah, that was good. Very, very nice. Bright Side IPA, Portland, Maine, 7.1% alcohol. Hey, so how about you, Mark? We forgot about your IPA.
Yeah, the only dry host here who's not a lush. It's hot chocolate for me. Okay, and my wife does
Hot
this
chocolate.
thing where she puts marshmallows and then she puts hot chocolate over it and then whipped cream, and it's like so much sugar, man, that I like pass out and wake up in a pool of urine. But, so that's what we're doing, dude. Just like, can you add some salt tonight, please? Like, just balance the flavors, like some lemon rind, something. Anyway.
Wow.
Freak out with some sugar, you guys.
Is it Nestle or is it just regular hot chocolate?
It's it's powdered, man. But
Powdered,
you get whatever.
Okay.
It's just
all
like
right.
I'm going for diabetes as soon as possible.
I do want to.
Hey, it is Christmas week. It's sort of it's a festive week. These sorts of things are completely acceptable.
Of course.
Now, when you were a small child, there's no way in hell I would have ever given you sugar. And I try to minimize what I give my kids, but Mark, I can only imagine you as a child on sugar.
Oh,
holy smokes!
Bouncing off the walls.
So one day we'll talk about the pyromania. The pyromania was a klepto and a pyro when I was a child.
Oh,
and we'll get to that at one point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, guys,
not today though.
I think we also need to propose a toast to our honor group of the week. And I got to say, because Jim posted their photo up on Inside Foos TV on the Facebook page today, the Arapaho Foosball Club of 1980. Wow. That's our honor group of the week. We propose a toast to those guys. What do you say? Let's tip one for those guys.
Absolutely.
All Native Americans, consequently. Arapaho.
Yeah.
It was a tribe.
There you go.
No.
Yeah.
But whatever.
No, and if you haven't
players.
seen the picture out there, folks, go to the Inside Foos TV Facebook group. If you're not a member, please join and have a look at that picture. It's kind of a famous foosball picture with I think 7 or 8 Arapaho Club members lined up, including 3 Hall of Famers, Mike Bowers, who was sort of the captain of the team. Tom Spear was part of that, Todd Loffredo, and our guest tonight as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's great, and I love the way they dress. Man, I just talk about classy, the collared shirts. Everybody's got the same color. It's it's beautiful, really nice. So that is our honor group of the week. Now, I will actually, I think we can toss in another honor group of the week as well, and this one is well, this is a bit more apropos, I think, for the current times. I want to recognize and thank sincerely all frontline medical workers who helped keep us safe during this pandemic. So
yeah, that's a great call, and certainly I'm raising a glass to them as well.
Yep.
Yeah, they're really the heroes in this whole thing.
Oh, no doubt.
Have been those people. Yep.
And wherever you are, whatever you're doing, we appreciate what you're up against. But thank you so much.
Thank you, folks. Here's to you.
Wow. So this is the end of the line for 2020, and I think a lot of people are just going to show up for New Year's Eve just to make sure that 2020 gets out, go away, get lost. So I thought maybe we could take a little time out here just to talk about the past. In fact, the past when it comes to the year 2020. Mark, if you'd like to go first, what do you remember most about FoosTalk Live in the year 2020?
Wow. So I remember being asked to be a guest at some point, or inviting myself to be a guest. I don't know the order now. And then like squirming my way into like a weekly deal, like coming in and like interrupting your show every week, and then becoming a regular somehow, and having a great time. So many incredible memories built up, having fun doing. I remember initially getting on the show to pass the time and feel like I was communing with old friends, and then it turned into something really, really fun. So,
Well, Mark,
it's been an incredible ride. I hope you guys keep inviting me back.
Well, we consider you the Betty White of FoosTalk Live. How's that?
Oh, that's I like that. Just like she's a sexual beast.
I mean, she showed up out of the blue on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and became a regular like overnight. So yeah, that's you. That's basically you. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Big hit. Well, Jim, what about you? What do you remember about 2020 and FoosTalk Live?
Oh, I'm trying to get past the Betty White thing. But Tom, when you and I first started talking about doing this, I know COVID had just hit. And
Yes.
we were looking to do something different. We were looking to keep the community connected, looking to focus on a little bit of history. And a lot of it, we really didn't know where we were headed. Since those early days,
Right.
Mark has come on board. I knew we never should have given him the phone number. And then, the different features that we have and the feedback on the show, the continued improvement in the numbers of listeners. And literally, I've had feedback from all around the world. I know Reese Roberts in England has been a regular listener. Austria, Germany, Asia, folks tuning in and listening to the show either live or downloading it.
Right.
And so that was a lot. I think the evolution of the show, and Mark was a big part of that. Mark and I, going back to the early to mid 2000s, have really had great chemistry together, working in the Inside Foods booth on matches. And I think hopefully that sort of thing has continued and will continue to continue as we go along here. But I've always enjoyed debating with him, talking foosball with him. And so that was a big part of it. And of course, Tom, you're the guy that you're sort of the parent in the room here that sort of keeps us in line, keeps the show on track, and really lends such a great deal of professionalism to what we do here.
Well, I appreciate that.
Looking back on the history, being able to focus on the history, kind of keep people connected with what's going on, and looking forward at some point to actually having some real news stories each and every week as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, Jim, because you mentioned the fact that we kind of discussed this over after an episode about the pandemic of FoosTalk Radio, Foosball Radio. And, I thought, hey, why not? I mean, we're all kind of stuck inside. We have nothing better to do. We can't compete. So let's give it a shot. And man, I'm glad you talked me into it. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, you guys have heard us talk about the fact that all three of us, I think, look forward to Sunday nights because obviously the fact we get to talk foosball, get to have special guests on, but we have a lot of fun. We really have a lot of fun, and they haven't heard nothing yet. The pre-show, oftentimes, which our good friend Clay Toomey joins as well, can be equally fun, as much fun as what we do here live.
Absolutely. Well, I do want to say one thing about what I remember the most. I'm always going to remember about this experience of FoosTalk Live, especially in this first year. I had no idea the reverence that fans of foosball have for especially the legendary players from the 70s and the 80s, the reverence. In fact, Mike Green and, of course, Ken Allwell joining us recently. We've seen our ratings spike because of these guys. There's been an absolute fascination with the tales of the legendary days. Those what do they call it? The golden era of foosball. And I think tonight we'll continue that tradition. But that's one of the things that I've found most surprising about this idea of FoosTalk Live, what people are responding to. So there you go. But
it is so true, and I was that way as well. We're looking at the great players, the great teams of the 1970s, and then through the 80s, into the second golden era of the 90s. We really do look at these players as superstars, in our sport. And especially we look back so romantically, and in this case, the TS Tour of the 1970s, hopping in the van and traveling the country and playing for big money. And these players who were so dynamic and dressed in their collared shirts and their bell bottoms, looking like golf pros with the name over the breast. Had to have your name and usually your hometown on there as well. But it was so professional in the 1970s. We had a chance last week to talk $1 Million Tour with Ken Allwell. And tonight, we get to talk with a guy from Colorado by the name of Bob Maloney, a world champion,
right?
And a guy who kind of came on at the tail end of the 1970s, but certainly got a taste of it. and then sort of segued into the 80s where the money had gone down, but he had some of his better tournaments, best success during that decade as well. So looking forward to talking to Bob tonight.
No doubt about it. Well, since we are on the subject of history,
with great moments in foosball history, this is a FoosTalk Live Flashback.
The name of the game, the team of Loffredo and Weidman, is defense in this particular match. Loffredo touches 2, putting the ball back into play, looking for the world championship. Todd Loffredo pulls shot position, shooting against Bobby Diaz, executes the split, angling it down the middle, and for the second year in a row, Todd Loffredo and Scotty Weidman are world champions. Defense, 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 Evan.
No doubt about it, Jim. Todd Loffredo was consistent as you can be on that 3-bar shot. He stroked it. But the main deal was goalie of the year. Very well earned in that match. Scotty Weidman defensively all over the table on Terry's 3-row. On Terry's 5-row. Anytime he needed to get a defensive block somewhere on the table, Scotty Weidman pulled it off.
You had the great offensive weapons of Terry Moore and Todd Loffredo on the table, but it was the hard-nosed defense of Scotty Weidman that was the difference. As for the second year in a row, Loffredo and Weidman are number 1.
Back-to-back world doubles titles, Loffredo and Weidman, and I don't know if we've ever had that in history.
Listen in next time for another great moment in foosball history. It's FoosTalk Live Flashback.
You know, at first I thought we were listening to the same thing from 1994, which we had last week, but no, that's 1995, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They became the first team to ever go back to back at the World Championships.
Wow.
As they beat, it's Loffredo and Weidman beat Moore and Diaz. That's Terry Moore and Bobby Diaz in that final. You know, and I was looking, when I put together this flashback earlier today, I was looking at Loffredo's last shot. Okay, so he sets it up in pull shot position. Bob Diaz shows him a standard defense. Loffredo just waits. And as soon as Bobby Diaz crosses over and goes into that reverse defense, a little slow-moving slider right down the middle by Loffredo. Looking for it the whole time, executed it beautifully, and they won a second consecutive world championship. Again, first team to ever do that. That was 1994, 1995. No TS team did it. No Dynamo team did it. They were the first.
Yeah, and there was a lot of enthusiasm on your partner's role there in that particular clip too. And what is his name?
That's Evan Stachlik. Evan was my very first color man in the 1993 Worlds, the very first World Championship that I ever worked. Evan sat in with me. He was a pro player, a very good pro player, master player out of San Diego, and of course, very good friend. And he was a very good expert commentator as well. No Mark Torres, but Evan was really good.
I was at that tournament, you guys. I had already quit playing foosball. 95, I had already quit, but I was going to tournaments just to hang out with friends. My table was long gone. I was in like my 3rd year of college. And that brings back a memory for me because I'd already quit and I'd already known that I didn't have the discipline or commitment to practice. And I think that's the beautiful thing about having these players from the prior era of foosball. Foosballers kind of is a great reminder. And I talk a lot about the 10,000-hour guys, but the better analogy is this. When people approach, so you have your job. Foosball is a recreational thing for us. My job, the way I approach my job, my actual career, if I approached foosball, or any of us approached foosball with the same tenacity and commitment and discipline and work ethic that we approached our real jobs, now that's what these guys did. And we talk about layers of practice. And so learning how to do a wall pass and a lane pass and learning how to shoot a shot and learning how to block stuff, that's very fundamental foosball.
Yeah.
And people learn that basic skill set and they go to foosball tournaments. That's not what these guys did. Like, you had, even to get to the table, you had to be skilled everywhere across your game to get to the table. After that, it was taking notes. It was like deep dive analytics into your competitors and opposition. It was a work-like approach to the game. No one besides Tony Spreedeman, maybe. And Tony is looking for challenges right now. I can't think of anybody else in the United States anyway that approaches the game with that type of effort. A bunch of guys did. And that's what we have today is Bob Maloney, one of those guys that approached the game that way.
What a great intro. So let's. What do you say? We say we'll bring on this amazing Colorado legendary player. So Bob Maloney, welcome to FoosTalk Live.
Thanks, guys.
Glad you could make it with us tonight. So Bob, what's it like around the holiday season in your neck of the woods?
Well, I'm an essential worker. I'm in the real estate business, so I haven't had
Gotcha.
didn't have much of a break. They called me. I tell my wife that I'm essential. I need to go to work. So anyway, I've just been working, and the weather's kind of cold lately, so been bundling up and going out there.
Well, we are so glad that you could make it. Now, your era of play goes all the way back to the 80s, correct? You were in that photo with the Arapaho Club?
Started playing in in college we fooled around in the 76, 77. I started finding out about tournaments in the 77 and then started playing. I got hooked in 78, and I did nothing but foosball for a couple of years there, 78 through maybe 81.
Awesome. Very, very cool.
Yeah, we're really focused tonight on that era as we were last week. In fact, our top 5 tonight is going to be top 5 best tournament soccer goalies. And I'm glad I'm not going up against you. I'm glad that it's Mark Torres again that I get to go up against tonight, because I've lost the last 2 weeks to Mike Green as we talked Dynamo, and then Ken Allwell last week. After beating Mark, I think 18 in a row or something like that.
Whoa. So I won the last 2. I've won the last 2 weeks by bringing in Mike Green and Ken Allwell.
Yeah.
And I'm going to win again this week.
Not a chance.
By bringing in Bob Maloney.
What? Again?
Yes.
A third week in a row.
That's right.
This doesn't feel fair to me.
Listen, no one executes under pressure like me with Bob Maloney. Okay. So let's do this, you guys. Let's fight.
All right, here we go.
Bob, you better be ready.
Once again.
Am I going
FoosTalk
first
Live
again?
top 5.
Yeah, you're going first.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Here's Jim Stevens and Mark Torres.
Oh, I love the marching band. Last marching band of the year. This is our final show. Top goalies on the TS Tour, top $1 million tour goalies, and that's quite a challenge, because there were so many good ones. And looking forward, I guess, to batting heads with Bob Maloney, a man who, of course, was active, was a champion on that tour, 1980 LA Open singles champion. And the guy really broke through in 1979. Again, you mentioned earlier, Tom, about the Arapaho Foosball Club. He was a member of that. All right, Bob, I'm ready for you. Let's do this.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number.
And again, so many great players, so many great goalies in that decade. Really makes it tough. A couple of the names that I left off my list are Hall of Famers. And that's how good it was. But at number 5, I have Laurie Schranz. Laurie Schranz, one of the top 2 or 3 players. Most people consider Cindy Head the greatest lady player of all time. You have Tina Roton, you have Laurie Schranz. That's really your big 3 when it comes to lady players. But Laurie was, of course, a great lady player, singles player of the year, lady player of the year a couple of different times. But won numerous mixed doubles titles, but also won a couple of open doubles titles. Now, they weren't the national championships that Tina Roton did in 1985, but still, these were regional and pretty good size events that she won open doubles in. She won the Indianapolis $25,000 tournament, 1978. What would that $25,000 be worth now? 125? But she won that weekend a rare triple, at least a double, where she won open doubles and women's doubles in that same weekend. Also at the $50,000 tournament in Reno, 3rd place finish in open doubles, a champion at the Santa Cruz Open in open doubles. So Laurie, and you know this, you knew Laurie, great player, great singles player, great lady player, but also just a great goalie. Someone you put back there, you didn't think about whether she was a man or a woman. She was just a great goalie, such a smart player, so feisty, so intelligent on the table. My number 5, best goalies of the TS era, I've got Laurie Schranz. How about you, Bob?
Well, I had Lori in my list of honorable mentions, along with Smiley Shure and Sean Coonrod, John Shotwell. I went up against one of my first tournaments, and he was the difference in a match. But my number 5 is a guy I knew well, was Gil Jackson. He played with Todd in '77 and won Worlds, and he played with Bob Gibson in '79 in a couple of tournaments, and they did really well. And he was an amazing player. No fear in his game.
Yep, for sure. And I've got him on my list a little bit higher, which we'll get to here in a minute. But certainly Jackson deserves to be on the list.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number 4.
My number 4 is a guy that was voted the player of the 1970s. A guy who really started off, with a huge win in 1974. Really the first major championship in Elitch Gardens there in Denver, when he won open singles. And if you've seen the movie Foosballers, he talks about that story, talks about how proud his dad was of him. And then Mike, as things evolved, Mike kind of became a goalie, ended up winning the World Championship in 1980, playing the goalie position. And a guy that in 1982, when I took third at the U.S. Open on Dynamo in open doubles, I faced Mike Bowers and Greg G. Perry for the winner's bracket. And I had been shooting probably 70 or 80% against everybody with my push kick. I got up against Bowers, and I think I went something like 2 for 23 in the match. And he just shut me down. He was the best goalie I had ever faced up to that point. This was on Dynamo, a little bit after, of course, the TS Tour. But how can you have a list from the 1970s like this without having, one of the true pioneers, one of the greats of all time in Mike Bowers? He's my number 4.
I agree. He's a good player. He's on my list, but not quite yet. My number 4 is Ken Rivera from I think he's up from Portland.
Yep.
But when I saw him play, he played really, really well. He did a lot of. I think he won with Kaiser in one of the first Worlds.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
And then he took a third with Reynolds in the big. What was that, 79 Worlds? And he actually put me and Zeke. I played with Zeke in my first Worlds in '79, and Ken Rivera we won the first 2 games, and then he did what he had to do, and they won the next 3, and they ended up finishing at third. So anyway, my number 4 is Ken Rivera.
Yeah, Ken Rivera,
FoosTalk
guy that I've gotten to
Live
know.
Top 5. Number 3.
Yeah, Ken Rivera, a guy I've gotten to know over the last few years. He has come back out and played again. Yes, he is from Portland. Won with Dan Kaiser in the mid '70s, and great guy, and absolutely on my honorable mention list. But my number 3, I've got Gil Jackson. Obviously, the big win in '77. Maybe the best goalie war player that ever played the game, at least up until these last few years when we watched Ryan Moore play. But Gil Jackson could really shoot the ball, and you know this, and you were a good friend of his, and unfortunately we lost him. I want to say it was 1982. But Jackson, had a few, as you said, with Gibson. He won the only goalie war tournament ever, up in the Bay Area of Northern California. There was a dedicated event for goalie war, and Jackson won goalie war there. He was a world champion in goalie war when it really meant something. And also just a great partner. He'd get you 2 or 3 a game at times. We'd heard Ken Allwell talk about him last week and just how tough he was. And of course, Allwell lost to him in that '77 championship. But Gil Jackson, legendary player, really renowned as a shooting goalie. But he's going to be in my number 3 position here tonight.
He's one of those fearless players. He could do anything at any time. Number 3 for me is Brent Bednar from Minnesota. He had a long, impressive career, I guess, in the late TS days, playing with Mike Bells mostly. I never saw Bells play, but I saw Bednar come through town. They'd all hang out at Bowers or come through on their way around the country. I don't know, these guys that would get in bands and just, hit tournament after tournament. But I saw him come through and saw him play in some big matches, and he was pretty impressive. From what I hear, he was an incredible racer. So that's what Gummison and Bowers told me about Brent Bednar.
FoosTalk Live Top 5. Number 2.
Yeah, I've got Brent Bednar at number 2. Of course, part of the great team Bells and Bednar, world champions in 1976 after finishing second at the World Championships in open doubles the year before in 75. Talking to Ken Allwell, who was with us last week, a guy that's, one of my best friends. He called Brent the best pure goalie. He was the guy that could get it done on both sides of the ball, was just a goalie. When you thought about a goalie in the 1970s, you look at Brent Bednar, that's what he was. He didn't play much forward, didn't play a lot of singles, but was a guy that would play that goalie position and do everything the right way, play the game the way it was supposed to be played. Part of one of the greatest teams in the history of the sport in Bells and Bednar. But I've got Brent Bednar. Again, out of Minnesota, out of all those great players, out of that Nut Goody system up there in Minnesota. But Brent Bednar is number 2 for me.
Okay, number 2 for me, I'm going to put in Doug Furry. He's probably I'll just let you say that, but he was an incredible player. Obviously, he played with Wiswell, and they were pretty dominant in, 79, and they won a lot of other tournaments that weren't world championships, around the country in those years. So I played Doug Furry one time in singles. He beat me match ball, but he was awesome. He was a great forward and a goalie.
FoosTalk Live proudly presents the Top 5. Number 1.
Well, I'm really curious about who you have at number 1, Bob. I think I might know, but for me, looking back, and again, these were not guys in the 1970s. I was a really young player. I was a novice player. I was a novice player when tournament soccer crashed in '81. So I never really got to play against these guys, and that's the one perspective you have here, and probably what is coloring your choice of number 1. But my number 1 is Doug Furry. Of course, part of the most legendary team to come out of that decade, out of that era. Wiz and Fur, Jim Wiswell and Doug Furry. Furry, when it comes to smart players, I've heard people call him the smartest player ever. You mentioned you lost to him in singles and lost match ball. That's pretty good because Doug was a great singles player. A guy that could play the forward position really well, was a great goalie, but had maybe a better forward playing with him in Jim Wiswell, but not by a whole lot. But Jim was a pure forward. Jim wasn't going to get back there and play much goalie. So if they were going to play as a team, it was going to be Furry at goal. And for me, the fact that this was the team of the 1970s, legendary team, Hash Jeans, Wiz and Fur, Doug Furry, the goalie on that greatest team of that era, is my number 1 goalie.
Well, mine was probably slanted a little bit because I like him and he's from Colorado. Mike Bowers was the best goalie. If I had to pick a goalie to outthink somebody or to out maneuver, or just his physical game was incredible too. He won, like you said, 73 and 74. I think 74 you said was the Elitch's tournament.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But then he came through in 1980 and won with Tim Burns, who was an incredible local player. But Bowers was the smartest and the strong. He had the incredible power, and he was the smartest guy I knew. So I pick Mike Bowers.
Yeah, it's a great choice. And, I've gotten to know Mike very well. As we worked together on Hall of Fames, both the National Hall of Fame and Colorado Hall of Fame. And he can tell stories. And Mike, right? Mike will look back. He talks about, being up in Missoula in 1973 and that tournament up there. And then, of course, Elitch Gardens, the first big major championship. Imagine this. In 1974, a $50,000 tournament. Again, the movie Foosballers talks about that. But yeah, nobody can talk foosball quite like Mike Bowers. Truly one of the legends of the game, and a great choice, of course, at number one for you. And again, this is 3 weeks in a row I'm going down. Thanks to you, Mark Torres. Great job tonight, Mark.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Mark.
Bob, also, well done. I appreciate you propping me up as you should. Interestingly, Ken Alwell calls Furry the best forward of the 70s. So I guess in Ken Alwell's eyes, Furry, and yours, Jim's, Furry is probably the best forward and the goalie of the 70s, which would make him the best player of the 70s. Does that lean a little bit toward how smart these guys were? The smart guys getting the credit for coordinating and dictating, like Bowers? Is it all about the intelligence behind the ball that puts these guys' value really high? Anybody?
you talking
Yeah,
to
sure.
me?
I mean, yeah, I'm talking about intelligence. I mean, 'cause I get to hear the stories, and I get to I never really I saw Bowers play a little bit, but there's the physical ability, and we still have those guys today, but the intelligence behind the game, is that really what gets valued in your mind, having seen these guys play? Same with Furry, right? Really, really smart. I understand.
They prepared. I called Mike earlier today just to find out about his, competitions and goalies. He told me stories about Marcio Bonilla and Johnny Lott, and like Jim was saying, he talks foosball. We talked for about an hour and a half, but he analyzes. He prepared. He told me about when him and Tim won in '80. They had a 6-week program where they were just doing nothing but preparing for that tournament. They knew they were going to have to beat Wiz and Fur, and they beat Tom Spear and I at 5th to get, to advance. So I didn't even remember, some of the things he was pointing out about that match. So
Amazing.
He's all about foosball. When he's into it, he totally is into it.
And you bring something up very interesting there. A lot of these guys, and he's not the only one. We see it with Allwell last week as well. They can literally remember moments or plays or scores from matches that were now 40 plus years ago, but they are as fresh in their minds as yesterday's breakfast. They're able to break things down and remember reactions, remember specific plays that were made. And Bowers is like that, of course, and many of these great players. Loffredo can do that as well. And it's really something, I think, that is a testament to how smart they were, how involved they were, and how special that time was. You kind of came on when 1979, I think, was your first year really out on tour. And you broke through, had some nice finishes that year and then into the next year. But two things. One, talk a little bit about your memories of that era before it crashed. And then also, in the Denver area, the Arapaho Foosball Club. If you guys out there listening haven't seen the picture, head over to the Inside Foos TV Facebook group and have a look at the Arapaho Foosball Club. 3 Hall of Famers and maybe a couple more guys that should be. But talk about how professionally it was approached, how you were supported by that Arapaho Foosball Club, and also, again, your general impressions of that era, even though you were at the tail end of it.
Yeah, well, the Todd and Zeke, the very top guys. I don't know if it's probably pretty typical around the country. They don't show up, for locals every week, every 3 times a week. You wouldn't see them playing in the arcade. But there were hundreds of other players that became really good. And then when it was a big money weekend or something, then Todd would come in, and then I'd get to see, what Tom Spear was all about. So it wasn't you didn't see all these great guys every week, but you'd see them a couple times a month maybe. But my goal was just to learn how to play, to learn with them by making it tough for them to play, by making it tough for them to score on me. So that was kind of my goal.
Tom, what do you got for Bob?
So Bob, I was just wondering, when it comes to the early days, long before you actually stepped into a tournament, there must have been a first moment where you saw a foosball table. Do you remember that moment, and what kind of table might that have been?
Sure, I was up at up at CSU in Fort Collins. I was in college.
Okay.
Hadn't seen anything in high school or didn't know anything about that Elitch's thing or the tour. But then they had a Deutsche Meister table at the Student Rec Center.
Got it.
And I started playing there. There were quarters lined up, and got the bug. And then eventually I went over to the local arcade where they had posters of the tour, and people started talking about Todd and Gil having won the world championships.
Started hearing about the legends, the legends of the game, and got curious.
Yeah, they told me these two kids from Littleton, and I grew up in Littleton. So next time I went down, I looked up and found Doc's Foos Hall. That was the arcade owned by Bowers, and that was just an incredible thing.
Do you remember the moment that you realized you were hooked?
No, it was it was a gradual thing. When I started playing in tournaments, I've always been competitive, and I would do just learn as fast as I could to how to win a match, how to win a ball.
Okay.
And then go on to the next thing.
Now, was the Deutsche Meister a good table to get acquainted with the game on? I mean, did it help you step into other tables?
I don't think so. It had the springy little bearings or the bumpers, and I never had much of an offensive game, or I didn't start out with any kind of a shot at all, probably for a couple of years.
Right.
So I just concentrated on the controlling the ball and clearing the ball, and I rarely would play forward for at least my first 2 years.
Interesting. Now there, of course, you probably played on a regular basis. Were there certain people that showed up at your local competition that you thought, hey, I've got to beat this person before I can move on?
Oh yeah. The Bob Gibson was probably, even though he was younger by 3 or 4 years, he and I came up together about that same time.
Okay.
And Tim Buckley was a great player. He only played through about 80 or maybe 81, but then he went off and became a very good motocross rider. And Bobby Benson, there's a lot of there was a game room in Aurora run by Kevin Roton and his wife Tina Roton. You guys know her. And over there you'd run into Russ Dyerly and a lot of all over town. There'd be pockets of great players everywhere you go.
Right. No, very cool. Now you've got a reputation as a very very good sportsman on the table. Someone I know that I heard recently said they respected you a great deal because of your sportsmanlike conduct at all times. Was there anything that you saw in those early days? A moment, let's say, that was the most outrageous moment that another player pulled off in a match. Can you share any of that with us?
I was a good sport because I was probably quiet. I
Gotcha.
was burning inside.
Yeah, we've heard lots of outrageous stories about you as well. But what was the most outrageous thing you ever did?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I can't really. There was no. I don't think I can come up with anything like cheating wise or.
Oh, hold on.
There was a lot of matches. I hated getting refs, and a lot of times, when the match gets close, that's when you need a ref. So
right.
I hated people that would start jarring the table at crucial points in a match when you don't have a ref. So that kind of bugged me, but you have to live with it, I guess. You have to be like two or three balls better than the opponent and not have it come to that.
So there's a story about you, Bob. And it's not cheating, but it's Spear. As Spear is a genius, and he found out ways to mess with the rules. And one of the story, you make the rules work in his favor. There's a story about the '84 Worlds, and you and Spear making the ball go dead to get 20 seconds back in possession. Is that real? Is that story true? That's not cheating, but it definitely is kind of. And there was a rule change because of it. Go ahead and speak to that.
I don't even remember what that was all about. Spear was the captain. I would just let him do what he did.
Good answer, Bob. Good answer.
Let me tell you why that's a good answer. I was texting with Rob Mars today,
Okay.
and my memory is pretty good too. And so I was talking about it was 92 Worlds, and I was playing against him and Spear for fifth and open. Maybe it was later. The year's bad. But anyway, I'm texting with Rob. I'm like, hey, the Colorado Clear, we lost to them in the pit match. And I'm like, whose idea was that? The Colorado Clear being you set the ball up in your 2-bar in the goalie area, you intentionally hit off the table, your forward gets the ball.
On the 5.
On the 5-bar. And so they're knocking the ball off the table over and over. And Fernando and I had never seen this before. And I'm like, Robbie, I'm texting him, whose idea was that? He said 100% Spear. Every time there's a manipulation of a rule, it's Tom Spear's genius figuring out how to force the Rules Commission to change a rule. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if Spear was doing the whole damn thing.
Bob is pleading. He's pleading the fifth here, I think.
Somebody told you that was in '84, huh?
Yeah, 84. I guess you beat Mike Green and Starcheski at fifth in the Worlds. And absolutely, Spear was either some combination of Spear and/or you was making the ball go dead to get 20 seconds back in possession all over and over.
I love it.
I don't know if we had that much control.
No.
Yeah, Bob.
Go ahead.
Bob, you were a guy, as we said, you came up at the tail end of the tournament soccer tour, 1979, 1980, 1981. You're thinking, this is great. I'm a professional foosball player. You know, I'm doing what I love. I'm around a lot of great people. I'm competing on maybe a couple of times a month for big money. And then suddenly in 1981, the tour crashes. And anyone we've had on this show and in other platforms, we ask them about it. They were there. What was that like? I mean, one day you have a professional tour, $1 million tour. The next day there's nothing. I'm sure you remember it well. How did you handle it? How did you deal with it? What was your experience with the crash?
Well, I lost to Horton in the finals of singles in '81, and I had a check that was no good.
Oh boy.
And Atari made a deal where they would give some merchandise. So I've got a Gravatar machine in my basement.
Gravatar.
Still today, and my kids have enjoyed it and their friends, and and after that tournament, I was already working. I'm a real estate appraiser, and I was already into it, but I wasn't. It was my second love, basically. It wasn't my main thing until after the crash, and then it became my main thing. So I went on to the real world after that went down, and from then on, foosball was kind of a hobby type thing.
Gotcha. But you are one of the few players from that decade. There's a couple of more of them, I suppose. Obviously, Loffredo, Tom Spear, Mike Bowers to some degree as well. Guys who then were able to transition to this much smaller tour, the Dynamo Tour. You had success. You won a world championship on the Dynamo Tour. What kind of kept you going? So many players really stopped playing after '81, or maybe played a little bit. Doug Furry played a little bit before finally retiring. What you loved foosball so much? I guess it was still fairly fresh for you since you really had come on rather late in the tournament soccer era. But that transition to Dynamo, how difficult was that? And was it something? Was it just your love of the game that kind of kept you going?
Yeah, that's what it was. I still enjoyed playing partners with Gibson in the TS days. I got to play with Gibson and Spear and Zeke and Loffredo a few times, and then Spear and I played quite a bit on the Dynamo Tour. And if you had a chance to play with Tom, you take it, because he was one of the best ever, obviously. And I just loved it. The control of the game on the Dynamo table was okay with my game. I was more of a finesse player, and I did the far wall passing series, which only Zeke was the first one that I remember doing that. And then Tony started doing it, I think, after I was in there. So
yeah,
Tony Bacon, obviously he perfected, he had the best 5-bar on the Dynamo table, but I was pretty close. I was not far behind. And I just enjoyed playing. As long as I could break even on the tournaments, I could justify keeping going to majors and I played with Gummison in '84. We won a nationals, I think they called it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I had a chance to, play with all these guys and had a good time. When the prize money, the way I justified going, if I could win a third or better and break even on the tournament, then I would go. So that was what controlled my love for the game. It had its limits.
Bob, you're a little bit scary. Let me tell you why you're a little bit scary. You got sportsman awards, and you're very soft-spoken, and you have that air about you. But you said earlier that you were burning up on the inside, and then the fact that you've won majors and been in the finals of world championships tells me that you're probably a little crazy on the inside competitively when it comes to foosball. That combination is a little scary. But let's focus on this. 87. Todd doubles at the tournament in open doubles because it was on Dynamo and Tornado. You played forward for Todd, and you stayed forward the whole event. Can you tell me a little bit, like your memory of that tournament from beginning to end, and what you're fond of? And just, I want to hear about that tournament.
Sure, I hadn't played with Todd in a while, several years probably. But when they had two tables going, he wanted to play forward with Murray on Tornado, and he didn't want to screw up his stroke playing on the other table. So lucky me, I got to play with him, and he played goalie the whole time, even though there was a few matches where I wanted to get back there. But he said, no, you're okay. We'll keep going. I had lost to Bacon and Chalifo on a couple of huge tournaments in the past. So that was a total relief for me to play them in the finals and win. So that was the story of that one.
Were they your toughest match in that tournament? Bacon
Yes,
and Chalifo?
absolutely. I don't think we lost a game up to that. I don't remember. We played Jeep and I think Joe Piscopo. And I think we played played with Javat that year. And I don't know if we lost a game until the finals, and then they beat us 3-1 to get to the last set, and then we beat them 3-1 in the final match.
Wow.
What was Todd like? Oh, well, then when we get to Todd, but so your far wall, chip wall, stick, and push shot, right? That's
right.
Your game?
Right.
Do you have a dead bar push shot? Tell me about your push. We don't get to see. Push shot's like a unicorn, man. I know one or two people that shoot it. They can't win a match. So I'm fascinated about a push shot winning Open Doubles World Championship. Tell us a little bit about your push shot.
I had a pretty good straight. If you tried to race me in a standard, I could go. My takeoff was fast enough where you couldn't race that. If I had to go around a reverse defense, I didn't try to do a dead man stroke, but I could get it in that long hole if I was practiced up. And then I had what saved me a lot. I had a really good moving straight, so you just chip the ball a bit and go back into the straight hole. And if people were racing me at all, that would usually work quite, really good. And I had a lot of times when I was confused and people were really getting on me, I would just close my eyes and shoot them middle as hard as I could.
That's ballsy.
Always works.
Todd's not a fan of shooting a blind middle, right? Even though he's probably the biggest offender of it. Because Todd's thing is, there's two men on that hole, and there's only one man on either hole, unless the defense is really stupid. But he's the biggest offender of shooting the blind middle, right? Like the blind, I don't know what to do. Shoot a middle.
It worked. It worked if you wait about 8 to 9 seconds, because by then the goalie's getting really tired, and usually if they're going to leave something, that's what I found.
And Colorado was where I really learned about the game. Colorado players, or where I really learned about the game. Everything looking the same, being a threat on second and a half second, 1 second, all the way to 15 seconds on the 3 bar or 10 seconds on the 5 bar. So always being a threat, never knowing where or when, and everything looking the same was something I learned from Colorado Foosers. Did that describe your game much? I don't know if you had tendencies in the short or the longer timing, or tell us a little bit about your method, your approach to 5 bar and 3 bar.
Well, I just on the 5, I'd take my time and usually toss it over there and see what's going on. And after I get to about 8 seconds, then I would, make my choice. They had to be on the. I had a quick double pump wall, which would almost always be there because I didn't use it that much. And mostly I would throw it over there, and you could tell if they were camping one place or the other. And then the second time around, you'd kind of figure out what they were going to do and then do the other.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of figure it out. And then there'd be the brush on the far wall side. I would also throw in a double pump lane. You see, Tony does most everything that I used to do, but he does it a lot faster. But and then the off the wall, back to the wall, and then off the wall and up, and then I wanted to learn everything that they did on the near side. I would try to do on the far side just to keep interested in the game and make it fun.
So, Bob, just a quick question: when it came to competing against these incredible players of that era, you're right up there alongside making shot for shot and competing with those individuals. What was your physical condition like? What did you do to get ready for a match? Were you working out?
No, the reason foosball appealed to me was because I wasn't fast. I'm not strong.
Okay.
So, when I played with Spear, he was totally into running and lifting weights. And I remember there was a time when with him, we would go down to the park and run and maybe play some tennis or basketball just to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I never got into the weightlifting that I probably should have. It would have helped me out probably.
I can hear the Rocky theme right now as Tom Spear and Bob Maloney are running through the park in the middle of winter with their beanies on. I can hear it now.
Usually it was summertime.
Punching beef in the cooler.
Yeah. No, Spear was a stickler for that, and Spear was a bodybuilder, as we know. And
dude, I heard a story that Spear was a stripper at one point.
Huh?
Bob, is that true? Was Spear a stripper at some point?
After I quit, I heard that he got into dancing, but that's as far as I knew.
As far as you wanted to know.
It's good money.
You didn't want to know any more than that, but I believe that story is true. I believe it is.
Oh my God.
So your career kind of, you went through the 1980s. You transitioned a little bit over the tornado table, had a little bit of success there, and kind of remained in touch with the tour. Also because you were an official, you were the head official on tour, I believe, as well. And then into the very early 90s, and then it sort of petered out. Let's get back to the official thing. Now, it takes a certain kind of guy to be an official.
Oh yeah.
And talking to you and hearing how level you are, you're probably the perfect kind of guy to be an official, probably the perfect kind of guy to be a head official. What was it about officiating that really attracted you to doing that? Because not everybody wants to be an official.
Well, I was a fan of foosball. I've been a fan of the game, and I just enjoyed watching the big matches if I wasn't in them. So you get a front row seat if you're judging the match.
Yeah, or commentating it. Yeah.
And
but then you got to deal with Johnny Horton. If you got to deal with Johnny Horton.
The fact of the matter is, usually when you show up, the malarkey, all the junk that was happening doesn't happen any longer. But I wasn't that good of an official. I was okay, but I missed a lot of calls. I imagine I would just enjoyed watching the game, and I would call the time, and if there was a jar or something every once in a while, or obvious things, of course.
But you've also you've stayed a fan of the game. I mean, I know that I've had a chance to see you a few times over the last few years, and your knowledge is still there. You still follow what's going on. You're watching Tony Spreadman. You're watching the live streams. Talk about how much of a fan of the game you remain, and talk about maybe some of the changes that from back then to now.
Yeah, I love listening to you guys do your talk show, and Clay's doing what? I don't know. I haven't heard. Does he do a Twitch thing anymore?
He did for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool, and of course all your videos that are out there. Yeah, it's just a fast game now, rod to rod. If I used to come back every year and watch the Colorado State tournament, or maybe just once a year or twice, I'd go watch a local draw. and rarely play since about the early mid '90s. I stopped playing for sure for good for about 20 years, but I still enjoy talking to I'm surprised that a lot of the same guys are still there, still playing. 20 years later, I'd still go in and see Mike Rush and Mark Rudnicki and Kevin Everson sometimes would show up, for the state tournament. And then last couple of years, I've seen Gibson. I hadn't seen him in quite a while. So it's fun to stay in touch and of course see all the world's results every year.
Was Gibson playing, Bob?
He had played 2 or 3 times, I think, in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, I've actually seen Bob play on the Warrior table a couple of times, and he was really good. And it's kind of a theory I have about guys who get to a certain level, mentally.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that 10,000 hour thing, like you talk about, Mark. But they get to a certain level. Mark Rudnicki as well. When I've seen him, he still has a lot of game. Bob Gibson still had a tremendous amount of game. And I remember Bob Gibson. I actually played him in a big final in a DYP. I want to say it was 80 or 81. This was, in many people's minds, the next great player. Bob Gibson was a stud. This dude was really good, right? And he was a contemporary of yours. You were right there with him as well. But he's a guy that when I saw him play here in the last 5 or 7 years, still had that game, that super talented game, grade 5, grade 3, just so focused, so intense. What do you think? I mean, obviously you kind of went on and kept playing. Gibson played a little bit onto the Dynamo Tour, but talk a little bit about what a great player Bob Gibson was and what he could have potentially become if the TS Tour had not died.
Yeah, he had a great patience. You never knew if he was going to do a 2-second shot or he'd wait till the last time frame, 15 seconds, and then do any one of the options. So he was tough, and he was so patient with everything. His 5-bar too, and the difference between the champions and the pretty good pros are the defensive 5s and the defensive forward game, and he had all that too.
I think you mentioned it earlier. The game is faster rod to rod now. That's just an advent of the modern style of play and the best players influencing that, whether it's Tony or Ryan. But we're not that far removed from Fred. And Fred might have moved the ball quickly, but he would pass on 1 second or 10 seconds. And so using all the time, I think, is the big difference that you notice. I don't think people use their time. That doesn't mean always waiting. If you always passed an 8 or 9 or 10, then there's no element of surprise. The element of surprise is being methodical to 8 or 9 or 10, or passing it, and then every once in a while passing on 1 or passing on 2. That's what throws people off. I'm just bringing this up because there's plenty of room for that style. You want to call it old style, 90s style. There's plenty of opportunity for that game to come back in vogue and really thwart these guys and gals that are used to using half the time and getting everything done, getting everything done faster. They can be perplexed easily by someone who comes in highly skilled, that exercises the style of play you're describing. So I don't know. I think there's room for it. But I want to switch gears with you because as an official, one of the questions that came in from someone else is not my question. Who was the biggest trash talker you had to deal with when you were playing foosball? Who's the one you had to deal with? And do you think that kind of thing is good or bad for the game?
Well, obviously Horton would be up there, and Murray used to get under my skin because he'd score a ball and then he'd grab the ball and he'd talk to all of his 5-guard. He'd tap the ball on each of their heads as he handed me the ball. Here you go. By the time it got to me, it was kind of dirty, but what the heck?
That's so funny.
But and Jeep would milk the clock on everything he did. In between games, he'd go down and meditate for a little bit. But you try not to let that stuff bother you.
I love it.
Do you think? Well, so those are like characters, right? I know Murray used to do a lot of stuff we don't talk about. He used to do a lot of stuff, but but do you think that stuff? Do you think that's good for the game, or do you think it's bad for the game? The gamesmanship.
I think it's good as long as you keep within the time limits that you're supposed to keep.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun to see the different players and what they do. Texas, when I first got into the tornado thing, when the Texas players would come up to Denver or we'd go down there, they would be much more loud than what we were used to playing. You know, get in the box, baby, after they'd score a shot. And I think that was kind of fun. The most recent tournament I played a couple of years ago, I started playing in draws, and I love whenever it was a match ball, there would be everybody would yell match ball or whatever they would say, so that everybody in the surrounding tables would all stop and go look at and watch a match ball.
Meat nut.
That's meat nut. That's what they would say.
One of our former guests has this to say, and I want to get your opinion. One of our former guests says that one of the reasons why our sport is so quiet is because the great Todd Loffredo managed somehow. I don't know if they're like conspiracy theorists or what, but somehow the great Todd Loffredo managed the rules that way because it served him. Because Todd was such a physical specimen that he wanted you to beat him on the table, and he wasn't a big fan of the gamesmanship. Is there any truth to that story that Todd somehow manipulated the competitive environment to serve to give him an advantage?
No, I don't think so. I think he's just a great player, and the tornado table is great for his skills. He's one of the smartest guys I know, and also has the best ability to adapt to any situation on a foosball table. If he would have played, after we played with him playing goalie, I started seeing more and more, or I started noticing a lot more of the top players were playing, like Ryan Moore nowadays. See him playing goalie for people, and I think back then, like, the top forwards would have been on my goalie list probably. Spear was a great goalie, and Gibson was a pretty good goalie. Not great, I guess. But anyway.
No, Mark's all about the conspiracy theories tonight.
Yeah.
Here's one I heard that Robert Mares used to put super glue in the lube bottles, and I don't know if this is true or not, but then the player would grease his rods with super glue. Now, I don't know if it's true or not. It could be true, or it might be fake news. I don't know.
I love it.
But Torres is all about the conspiracy theories tonight.
Mike Green said that on the show. I didn't make it up, man.
Yeah, Spear.
Blame it on Mike.
Spear, Loffredo, Mares with the super glue. Which we're just starting here tonight. That's a rumor that I've just recently heard. But who knows? I mean, and we're talking about guys that are really smart. There may be some truth to the Loffredo thing. I'll tell you that much. And I'm certain that what you said about Spear is true as well. You're a guy that has kind of seen the game from its beginnings. You were on the TS tour, the Dynamo tour. You experienced a tornado. And then into the modern era with Tony and Ryan and these great players. Talk about some of the changes, some of the evolution of the sport. Do you look at yourself with your style of game, a far wall passer, a push shooter, although I'm sure you evolved as well. But do you think you could play in this modern era? And how different is the game today than it was back when you first started?
It's hard to jump from rod to rod, and when I stay out of it, when I've been out of it for 20 years, it was really hard to figure out which rod to hold on to. but I think most games against good, talented players, it goes down to games go down to 4-4, and if you play good in the clutch situations, you'll win. It's not different, I don't think, in that respect.
I appreciate that answer, because you're essentially saying that all things being equal, I mean, take you back 20 plus years, it's going to come down to decision making and poise and composure. That seems to be true no matter what, because we talk about this over and over. There's a lot of guys that can do anything at any time. For some reason, that percentage drops dramatically when it's 4-4. And that brings me to the question I love to ask the great winners and great champions. How did you manage pressure? You've won. We have plenty of people that have never won a major and that probably never will, but many people aspiring and that will get close. So talk to us a little bit about your 4-4 situations, what's going on in your head, how you deal with the pressure, and how you executed when it mattered.
Well, I was not one of those fearless guys like Gil Jackson or Tommy Atkinson that really impressed me when I saw him come up. The 4-4 situation I did not do well at unless I was totally practiced and confident in my game. Then you think about what you should do rather than, whether you can do it. So I missed a lot of chances to advance. I still think about some of those matches where I missed a shot because I executed. But if you do it enough time and if you practice enough, then you don't have to think about whether you're going to execute it. You just look for the hole and do it. And I was able to do it a few times, I guess.
You're listening to FoosTalk Live with Bob Maloney, world champion and professional foosball player from Colorado. So, okay, Bob, what's your opinion? What state has the best foosball players?
After Colorado, you mean?
Unbiased opinion. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, well, there's great players everywhere. I don't remember anybody dominating. There was like 10 or 15 guys that could win any tournament when I was playing, and there'd be 4 or 5 guys from St. Louis or 4 or 5 from Chicago, 2 or 3 from, I don't know, the Northwest or Dallas or Houston or whatever. Any one of those guys could have won any time. So I'm gonna be a good sport and say there's a bunch of good players everywhere.
Okay, you're being very much the diplomat. Now here's a follow-up question for you. If you look back in memory, is there one player that you never had the opportunity to play with, you always wanted to play with, living or dead? Who would that be?
Playing with?
Yes.
Oh shoot. Yeah, well, present day, I'd pick Ryan and put him in the pits for me.
Nice. Good answer.
That's a good call. Yes.
Or Tony, if he would do that. But anyway, in the old day, I'd love to have played with Wiswell, but that wasn't going to happen.
Right.
With having Furry as a regular partner. But Mark Crowell was always one of my favorites. Back then, he was always solid and consistent and had a great attitude. I loved the way he played.
Yeah, just to follow up on your question about the strongest state, Bob is correct. It really had to be Colorado. When you look at the total number of world championships won, Colorado's won more than any other state. And of course, much of that was Todd Loffredo, although certainly several other world championships, including yourself and Zeke and others, of course, Gus Trevino. So there is some substance to what you're saying with Colorado being number one.
Of course,
and then the other states, of course, with
the guys from Florida might beg to differ these days, possibly. But
yeah,
possibly.
For sure. Florida, Texas, the Pacific Northwest, Minnesota, of course, all real strongholds early on in the sport, for sure.
Bob, who is besides Todd, who is the best pull shot all time from Colorado?
I would say, oh boy, there's a bunch of really good ones. I would think that Zeke had the best after Todd. Tim Burns was incredible.
Where do you put like Lucas and Rudnicki? Those guys are monster pull shots.
Yeah, they're right there.
Yeah.
I wasn't always that impressed if somebody had an incredible pull shot. I would be impressed as a partner if they had like 20 chances. If they kept
there's Tom Spear, right? Like Tom Spear, like not impressive at all.
Yeah, somebody that lives with the ball. I loved it when my partners would be getting the ball and just keep plugging away.
How about that question? Like, so you've seen these 5 bars, and Tony Spreedeman's 5 bar is a marvel, but so is Tom Spears. And how do you compare the styles? How do you compare? Do you think that's a ball for ball situation if those two are playing each other in their prime? What do you really think? How does that exchange go?
I can't really. I know that Spear had an incredible defensive five, and Tony is incredible everywhere too. But I haven't played against him, so I'm sure he's as good. So, it'd be fun to watch. Both in their prime. It'd be good. Tony's hits the ball a lot harder. Tom would figure out what he had to do, and he'd probably figure it out.
Right.
Yeah, Tom Spear. I keep hearing that. I mean, I got to see him play. It's not like I never got to see him play. I never got to see him play in the 70s and 80s, but he would. I understand and qualify this. He was so smart and so detail oriented that he'd pick up whatever that tell was, and so his defensive 5-bar was anticipating. He knew where you were going to be, and he got there before you were. He just snatched the ball from you, and then he'd take 10 seconds and get the ball back to his 3-bar every time. Is that a pretty fair description of his 5-bar?
Yeah, he was tough to get the ball through, and we'd have, when we were playing together, I'd go over there and we'd practice, a few weeks ahead of time and do nothing but 5-bar wars, and I'm sure that improved both our games quite a bit.
Do you ever get any? Do you ever get any compulsion, or is the World Cup playing in overseas on the senior team? Does that ever stir your imagination at all?
Well, yeah, that would. That's. I didn't even know that was going on. In the 80s, I went over there a couple of times to play. I think they were promoting the Dynamo table, so I had the advantage of playing on a table I was familiar with.
Cool.
But I got to know a bunch of the Germans and Belgians, Ismail and Carletta and Pascal and his brother Danny Grazier. I don't know how to pronounce it, but and then I stayed with Klaus Vogela and his family for a couple of days, and then they drove me around. That was in the late 80s, though. That was before they did all this World Cup stuff.
So, Bob,
but I like to travel. Sure, I'd go.
So out of all these tables and all these places you've been to play, what is your favorite table to play on, and what table do you think your push shot works best?
My favorite to play now is Tornado, because you can just go up to the table after not playing for a month or two and just start stroking it.
Okay.
I think you'd need more practice, or I would have needed to keep playing and consistently. But my shot was best on the Dynamo table, I believe. It was pretty good on the TS table by the time I took second in the Worlds against Horton. that was I scored. My singles game was probably better because I was a goalie and I scored from back a lot of times.
Gotcha.
But as far as my shot, my 3-bar, it was probably best on the Dynamo table.
Nice. Very interesting. Well, it seems like each table has its own characteristics, and of course, construction as things went on in history of foosball. When we finally got down to the Tornado table, it kind of included a lot of the qualities of those other tables. But so, do you actually have a table at home?
Yes, I do. I have had a Tornado, and I've probably moved it 3 times, and it's still there, and it still runs. It still plays great.
Nice.
It's got the wooden handles. It's probably 30 years old now.
Wow.
Oh man.
But it still plays pretty good.
Love those wooden handles. I never went. I loved them. I didn't use a wrap on those. I really liked the feel of the wood when I first started playing on the Tornado table. Yeah,
I've had I had Ray. Ray Gunn. You've had him on, and he's the local. He came over, gave it a tune-up about a year ago. So replaced a couple of bearings and broken mends. I didn't have all the pieces put together just right, but it's a solid table.
You mentioned earlier that your continuing to play was kind of based on your love of the game, and that's remained with you throughout all these years. Obviously all of us have kind of been shut down for the year, and as far as playing both on a local basis and a national basis, moving forward as things clear up and as we get past the the vaccine and tournaments return on a local basis and on a national basis, do you envision yourself getting back out there, at least locally, and playing? And I imagine we'll see you again at the Colorado State Championships, and we look forward to having a beer with you there maybe and talking some more foosball. But do you envision maybe getting back on the table a little bit once things clear up?
Yeah, I got the bug once. Jerry Todd gave me a call and said I was going to be going into the Colorado Hall of Fame.
Oh,
in 17, so that was 3 years ago.
cool.
Yep.
And I before prior to that, I would just show up for 20 minutes and then go home. But that kind of got the bug going, and I started playing. And me and Mark Redneck, he played in the 2018 state championships.
Yeah, I remember.
We played Ryan Moore second round. That was fun.
Wow.
Oh no.
How'd you do?
And then in the pro event, I played with Todd Huggins, who moved. He was here, but he moved back to Mississippi, I think.
Mhm.
But he and I finished 9th place, and then we ran into a guy named Tommy Yore. Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
Junior or senior?
he put us out. So at least I got a chance to play 2 of the best.
Jim Stevens, I got an appeal to you right now. You're on the selection committee, and Tom Yore listens to every radio show. I need a rule adjustment. What I need is, like, if you're a Hall of Famer, and a world champion, you get an automatic berth onto the senior World Cup team. So now you got Bob Maloney, you got Johnny Horton, you got Ken Allwell. Just bring out, and hopefully these guys can still use their wrists and their shoulders, and they can still stand upright for more than an hour.
There you go.
Just get these guys, man. Get these guys out there, and whatever, man. Why not? Let's get the 7 of the greatest, 8 of the 9 of the greatest all-time players that make them dust off a table and practice. Let's do this, man.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. And it's kind of already happening, especially 2017 in Hamburg when they won the gold medal, when the senior team won the gold medal. It was Steve Murray, it was Adrian Zamora, it was Steve Biney. These guys that are all Hall of Fame players.
Tony Bacon.
And Tony Bacon, right? In that senior team in 2017 that won the senior championship, won the gold medal, probably could have finished top 2 or 3 in the men's division. That's how good they were. And certainly I'm all for that. I'd love to see, I'm a guy that I encouraged Murray to go over there. I encouraged a lot of these guys because there is nothing like it. Bob, you had a chance to experience that European scene in the 80s. But going over there, playing under these conditions in a truly professional environment with 2,000 people in the stands watching, you're not playing for money. You're playing for pride, for your team, for your country, for that gold medal. There is nothing like it. And when Steve Murray finally went over there, after all that he has accomplished in his career, he went over there, won senior doubles, won senior singles, and won the gold medal with the team. He said it was the greatest experience he had ever been through as a foosball player. And so I strongly encourage any players, but I'll tell you what, that senior team is a tough one to break into. There are a lot of great players on there. But hey, Bob's got my vote, and I am a voter.
Well, we'll just tell Biney and Adrian, sit down. You guys have been playing straight for 50 years, man. Let's take a break. Go over there and have a beer.
Seriously, give us a chance.
Let Maloney and Allwell play doubles together. I'd fly there to watch that match in a heartbeat.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Johnny Horton playing goalie.
Let's get
for
controversial here for a second. Let's blow away good sense here and get controversial. So, Bob, direct question: rollover shot, snake shot, legal or no? What do you think?
It's I would vote for it. It's loud, and I don't mind. I don't mind having an offensive game out there.
Okay.
Games were long, much too long, probably with just the standard, the pulls and the pushes and the back pin, and a couple of people would do a kick shot.
What was your first impression, though? The first time you saw, let's say, Terry Moore use that shot, how did you feel about that?
That's about the time I quit.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Terry showed up at a Denver. We had a tournament at a Pinky's. There was a few Pinky's restaurants around pool halls, and I drew him, or I don't know if we came as a team, but there was a Hawaii 5-0 tournament where if the goalie scores, he gets the ball back, and we won that one so easily because every time he got the ball, he scored, and when I'd get the ball, and I'd just be having fun and showing off, trying to score so I could get another chance to score right away again. So that was, but anyway, he came through town and was right before he started dominating, but he was on the path. And I said, how do you block that stuff?
Nice catch.
Yeah, almost pulled the Trevor Park on us.
Hey, Gary Edgeworth is texting me right now, Bob. And Gary Edgeworth is saying, Bob Maloney is the meanest, sweetest guy you will ever know. Ask him why and also something about you being a baseball coach and you being the meanest, sweetest guy. So why is he describing you that way, Bob?
Well, he was Gary played, I think, baseball at Columbine High School, and my kids were in the Columbine area, and our kids, we sent them both through Columbine. And so anyway, my son, I was his youth. Shortly after I quit playing foosball, I took up coaching his team, from the ages of 5 through 14. So I don't know what the mean part is, but but I definitely was competitive all the way through.
You got to be a little mean on the table if you're going to win world championships. And I'm not sure mean's exactly the right word, but you have to be aggressive. And you talked about it earlier. You're burning internally.
Yeah.
Externally, you can't tell. Externally, you're calm, you're cool, you're collected, but inside you're burning. And you have to be a little bit mean. You got to be able to put those 4-4 balls away. So I kind of get it with what Gary Edgeworth is saying.
Yeah, he was another one that had an incredible pull shot too.
So boy, he sure did.
Him and Rick Lucas, and there's a kid named Lee Rowley that I think Steve Murray would remember because Lee was a good local novice / whatever's next. but he beat Steve at a world championship, or I think it was a worlds, but it was a singles tournament. I couldn't believe that Lee was hanging with him, but he just played a great game, and he beat Steve, and I just was I lost it because I know you're not. I didn't want to make anybody enemy of mine for the next time I had to play him, but I remember Lee Rowley was a great pull shooter too.
So apparently he beat Steve Murray and then never played again. Because I've not heard of him either, and I've heard of a lot of people. Really, really enjoying these last couple of weeks, looking back on the TS Tour and, of course, the Dynamo Tour a couple of weeks ago with Mike Green, etc. And, that's one of the things about foosball. The history is so rich. And I know you've seen the movie Foosballers, which touches on that. All of us who have experienced the last 40 years of foosball in this country and internationally as well. There's so much texture to it, so much history, so much community, the friends that we've made, the intense competition against those friends oftentimes. And that's one of the things I think that makes foosball kind of unique is that these are people that you're going to go have a beer with, at the end of the day, but they're also people that you're trying to beat the heck out of, when it's going on. And there aren't very many things where we have such a sense of community while also trying to beat the pants off of your friends. Is that something you can really relate to throughout the history?
Oh yeah. I was, best friends with Todd for 3 or 4 years. And then I think it was 80, whatever the pro soccer tour was, that in 82. Yep. Tom and I played in the top of the winners, and Todd was over there coaching Tom. And then I think that was the way it worked, or maybe the other way around. But anyway, I finished third to those two guys.
And you haven't spoken to Todd since.
And then afterwards we're all buddies again. So
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. It's one of the things that makes this sport so unique and so interesting and so great, because even though you are friends with somebody, it doesn't mean you want to beat the heck out of them on the table. In fact, you maybe want to beat the heck out of them even more than if you weren't friends. So a lot of fun looking back. And that's something that we're trying to do every week here at FoosTalk Live. And I know we've had such great response to the history of the sport. Foosballers, again, has documented it just beautifully, and hopefully to a crossover audience. Those of us in the sport know how special the 70s were. And then, of course, the transition to the 80s, the second golden era in the 90s, and then right on up till today. We know how special it is. But I think people in a crossover audience, the general public watching Foosballers on ESPN or wherever, have also sort of got to experience what we know is so special about our sport.
So
Bob, how do we make foosball more entertaining, Bob? How do we make it more entertaining?
That was the question I was going to ask. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, me
no.
too.
Who's
Me
that?
too.
Tom, go ahead, Tom. Ask.
No. I was just going to say, name two things that you knew about foosball back in the day we should be doing today that we're not to bring foosball back.
Well, I don't know about that. I'd shorten the time period on each rod, and just and making the goal bigger didn't help my goalie game, but it makes the game go faster. It's probably better to watch if there's more scoring. But back in the old days, it was more of a defensive game and a marathon game, which definitely probably would be boring as heck to a non-player.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoy the heck out of watching your videos, and Tony and Blake Robertson and Todd, these Rob Atha, all these guys that are coming over here and playing. It's fun. It's good to watch, and the different skills that they all have.
Yeah, from a personal perspective, doing what I do, and I've had people from Mark Crowell to Ken Allwell to you, to come up and tell me how much they enjoy my work and what I'm doing. And I've often thought about, what if I had been doing this back in the golden era of the 1970s, and how much fun that would have been. But the feedback I've gotten is as heartwarming for me as from anyone. To the players from the 70s who come back and say, Jim, we really appreciate and enjoy, what you're doing. And that makes me feel really good. As a child of the $1 Million Tour, my first event was 1977, the LA Open. And I got to experience that TS Tour a little bit. And so to get the feedback from players who I looked at as legends, as the true professionals, as these historic personalities, it's really, really nice. And you've had some very nice things to say about my work as well to me in person, and I appreciate that, Bob. Thank you.
I also like what, I don't know if Clay doing it, the statistics that he puts out. That's really fun for a observer to watch, whether somebody's shooting 50% or 20% or whatever.
Yeah, you hear that, Clay?
Bob, I spew belligerent nonsense. Sometimes I'm 5 drinks in. Do you appreciate what I do, Bob?
Always.
Hey, you're the fantasy foosball world champion, aren't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I forgot all about it till now. Bob was on my team. Bob, congratulations for being on my team. Fantasy world champions, baby. Yes.
Yeah, and Schumacher would email me, ask me to put a lineup together once in a while. So I put you in on one of them, and then I got flack for doing that one time.
Well, I lost. I never won a match in that damn thing. I couldn't win a fantasy match versus guys I never heard of, but I was so tickled to win the championship.
Wow, so it's really based on reality then. That's cool.
I'm fine with it. It's hysterical to me.
Wow.
I would have a jacket made, you freaks. Watch.
Bob, we're looking for an extra. We're looking for an extra host to replace Mark here. Are you interested in the job?
No. I don't speak well in front of people.
I don't know. You've done pretty well tonight. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you and getting your perspective on it. And the more we do this, the more different viewpoints we get, the more we can really flesh out what was such a special time. There really has never been anything quite like the $1 Million Tour of the 1970s, not only in foosball, but in sports in general. It was really something. And, we can make movies about it. We can talk about it. But I know for the people who were there, and we've talked to a lot of them, it was maybe the best times of their lives. And almost to a man, the people we have talked about from that era, and even from the 80s, the Dynamo era, they talk about it with such love and such great memories. And so we really appreciate you joining us here tonight, Bob, as we again look back on that era, and in your case, right on through the 80s and into the 90s as well.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Bob, we're incredibly lucky to get a chance to chat with you, especially as this is our last live show of 2020. What a great way to finish off the year. Looking forward to 2021. You gonna get out and play on the table?
Yeah, I'll probably show up for. I've been going to Ray has a route. He throws a weekly tournament out here, and the last time they moved to a bar that's about a mile away. So
cool.
I don't have an excuse not to play once in a while.
All right. Well, one of those nights you just dropped in.
I got one rough question for you, Bob. A rough one. Okay, here it looks like this.
Here we go.
You're gonna be in the Hall of Fame, and you're gonna need to call on someone to introduce you, who's on your short list to introduce you?
That's a good question.
That's a good one. Some people aren't around, and some people don't like to talk in front of people.
Uh-huh.
I'd have to check that out. I don't know.
Mike Bowers, it is.
There you go.
Introducing his 9th Hall of Famer.
He's got a lot to say.
Bob,
Yeah.
if you ever need a guy, I'll make it about me. It'll be 20 minutes too long.
Yep.
But it'll be highly entertaining. So just if you run out of people, all right, I'll be there for you, my friend.
And he'll sing. Yes, he'll sing you some music too. Something.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks again, Bob. Appreciate it, buddy. We'll see you hopefully at Colorado States next year, if not before that.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, Bob. Thank you so much, and happy New Year.
Yeah, you too.
Well, that was I got to say, guys, Bob Maloney, what a sweetheart, what a terrific guy.
Yeah, he comes out across as such a nice guy, but on the table, yes, he was calm and collected, but the dude was a killer. All right, this was a winner. This was a champion. You've got to be, right.
Yeah,
I mean, you really have to be internally. As he said it early, you've got to be burning internally, even if you don't necessarily demonstrate it externally. And that was Bob Maloney. The guy was a winner.
What do you say about the quiet ones?
No mistake. Right? He's soft-spoken.
Yes,
he's self-deprecating. He has humility. And he speaks with kindness, but it's hard to win now. Now, winning in the 80s and winning in the late 70s, had to be a killer on the inside.
Right.
And he talks about, I missed some shots. I go back and think about them, but he made the shots too. There's a hell of a lot more people that will never win a world championship or a major, and to sit in the winner's circle in a time when people were cutting each other's throats to win, in that group of guys, the Arapaho group of guys, to be competitive with them, he's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Don't forget it.
If we had,
that's why I would love to see the guy at the World Cup.
Yeah,
and with his seniors.
Yeah,
Make it
for
happen,
sure.
Jim. Make it
All
happen.
Right,
come on.
I'll consider it done, buddy. Consider it done. And Mark, you always ask our guests, what do they do in that crunch time? What's their approach to it? To be a world champion, Tom, to be a successful tour winner, oftentimes you're having to win 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 matches during the course of an event.
Right.
And 2 or 3 times, perhaps you've got a 4-4 shot that is a make or break, whether it's second game, third game, or fifth game. It's the guys who could make those 4-4 plays. That's who were the champions.
Yep. The closers.
It's like, that's right. The people who could win those, who could perform under pressure, and Bob Maloney certainly was one of those.
He says it. He says,
yeah.
I asked him, what happens? I've made a comparative, and he said, well, it's very, 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 very gracefully. Because it's going to be 4-4, and it's going to come down to who can put the ball in on 4-4. It comes down to composure, poise, and having a killer instinct. And we know the guy has one because he won. So make no mistake.
What's the
I would
phrase?
love to see this guy play again.
We could use the phrase "always be closing."
Right? Always be closing.
Always be closing.
Always be closing. Where's Clay when you need him? Always be closing. It's been really a lot of fun these last couple of weeks, looking back on the tournament soccer era, the Dynamo era before that. As we're closing out what has been the most unusual year of our lives, to say the least. Getting to reflect back on these magical times, talking to the people who were there, who experienced it, who are able to communicate it so well, has really been a heartwarming thing. And having this platform, FoosTalk Live, to do these sorts of things is so important, I think, for the community. And looking ahead into next year, into 2021, when hopefully things begin to open up again,
right?
When we're going to have real tournaments to talk about, we're still going to talk about the history. We're still going to put things in perspective. But what a great platform we have developed here. I think
it's
moving forward, Tom.
I think it's got some potential. What do you think?
Possibly. Yeah, I sure do.
Yeah, especially when we can be there in the heat of the moment when things are really intense, and we can talk to people about how they just won that championship, or how they came this close to winning that championship.
That's right. And one thing before I finish off here tonight, just from my point of view, looking ahead, 2021. The USTSO, what they're doing, and we talked with maybe you saw my interview with Donald Wilson. We've talked with, of course, the USTSO gang on here.
Mm-hmm.
Inside Foods, we're looking forward to some great things coming up. I really envision 2021 coming out of the fertilizer of 2020.
Yeah.
I think we've planted some seeds. Things are happening. And Mark, I know you agree, 2021 could be a really earth-shattering year for the sport. There could be some big changes coming.
For so many reasons, not to say the least that people don't know what they have or not. They don't have until they don't have it anymore.
Right.
And
Yeah.
how many people right now are aching to play some foosball? Like when you could play a tournament and you're just like, now people would love to play. I'm talking about an open tournament where there's no fear and no risk and no exposure, literally and figuratively. That's going to happen next year. Things are going to radically improve. So many things are happening that are amazing in foosball. Not everybody has visibility to it, Jim. And I know we're talking around things, but 2021 is shaping up to be an incredible year for foosball. Not an exaggeration. There are so many positive things happening. It can be a brilliant, brilliant year for foosball.
Could we say maybe history making or groundbreaking? Do you want to use adjectives like this?
Paradigm shifting. Paradigm shifting.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And we're not over promising here, I hope.
Right.
But I don't disagree. Hey, and again, I hope everybody out there has a great holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah.
Yes.
Kwanzaa to everyone, and Happy New Year. And we'll be back early next year again with more FoosTalk Live episodes. But have a great holiday season, everybody. Merry Christmas from the Inside Foos crew and the FoosTalk Live crew, of course. And man, what a year. On the one hand, I'm glad the calendar's turning over.
Yeah.
Still got some work to do. Not everything's going to change immediately when it becomes January 1st. But certainly, I think people can kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. That is the whole thing. We all want to show for the New Year's Eve celebration to make sure that 2020 goes away. Finally.
Yeah.
Get out. Go away. But yeah. So in all seriousness, Mark, would you like to say your holiday greetings as well?
I just really appreciate my Foos family more now than ever.
Yes.
I've gotten back into the community, and most of it has to do with the radio show, and it's been really fun engaging everybody. And I hope people are having, kind of my shtick is to make half the people laugh and half the people scratch their heads at why I'm opening my mouth. That's kind of my deal.
Wait a second, I thought this is really you
doing that, and I intend to continue doing that. Yeah. And the great thing about me is I'll antagonize you and buy you a drink. That'll all happen in the same day. So I'm excited. Looking forward to doing that with all of my new Foos friends next year for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and Tom, the best to you and your family as well.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for bringing Mark and I into the Foosball Radio family and helping to make FoosTalk Live such a special, unique thing in the sport. And I look forward to doing some great work with you in the future.
Likewise. But if I might get sentimental for just 2 seconds here, my greatest gift this year, you guys.
That's
wow.
And the listeners, of course.
Yeah, that's really nice. And I don't disagree. It's been this is a lot of fun. And we're going to continue keeping the community connected. We're going to keep doing what we do and doing it even better than before. Thanks again to everybody out there listening. And thanks to Mark and you too, Tom. Thank you, guys.
You bet, guys. Happy holidays. Everybody. See you on the other side, 2021. FoosTalk Live is a product of Foosball Radio and Inside Foos TV. All rights reserved. Our sincere thanks to 518 Prince, Foosball Clubs USA, Foosballers The Movie, Foos by Tony and Foos by Brandon, and the United States Table Soccer Organization. Join us next Sunday for another episode of FoosTalk Live. In the meantime,
we'll see you foosing.